Hey everybody, it's Joan Endicott, and I'm going to talk to you today about the subject, one that everybody experiences but nobody likes, and that's the subject of criticism. At least I've so far never met anybody who said, I just love being criticized. I always learn so much from it when I'm criticized. We maybe do learn some things sometimes, but typically we're not really looking forward to it. And sometimes, I don't know, if you're like me, we actually avoid doing things for fear of criticism. We avoid doing them altogether, or we just delay doing them because we're afraid of being criticized. I recently had a coaching client who was on the other side of the globe, who I could just feel her discouragement as she was talking about her family, who she said they don't even understand what I do, and yet they're not only not supportive, they're critical of me. I mean, she just shared how different members of the family just were critical of her and didn't even listen to find out what she did for a living, but just found reason to criticize. And she said, I just don't know what to do with that, Joan. And of course, we can't control other people, but we can control how we react and how we respond to other people. One story I shared with her, and I did tell her, I said, this is just a human condition, sadly. There are people who are critical for no reason. There are people who have just gotten in the habit of thinking critically, so therefore what's here comes out here and they criticize. And some people just have gotten in the habit of being critical. They don't even realize how they sound. And then some, and sometimes you and I, can be critical when we're feeling insecure about ourselves. And it doesn't really work this way, but somehow, sometimes people think, well, if I put them down, then that's going to make me feel better about myself, when it doesn't do that, but sometimes we'll be duped into thinking that. There's a great example in Scripture about somebody, I think, who maybe was trying to do that. You know, when David, who was going to fight the giant Goliath, went to the battlefield initially, he actually received criticism. And one of the people who criticized him was his older brother, Eliab. Eliab said to David, "What are you doing here? Why aren't you off tending those few sheep that are in your care?" And it goes on to share more about the conversation, and David saying, "What did I do to you?" kind of response. But it was interesting because also Scripture says Eliab burned with anger. Reading between the lines there, we look at the fact that Eliab was older, stronger, probably much more experienced, obviously, and was considered probably the manly man, like most of the people, most of the men on the battlefield. But it was interesting because you can just read through that and see how there must have been some kind of a bitter sting of envy that Eliab was hanging on to. Because why else would he have criticized his little brother for being there? If he would have had the right attitude, he would have said, "Hey, what are you doing here? And wow, you're so brave and courageous and bold. Obviously, you have God's calling on your life." And he would have been encouraging to him, not discouraging. What is it costing me to listen to critics, or to even consider the fact that I'm not doing it because I'm worried that I will be criticized? What is it costing me? It's a great question, because when you look at it and you really peel it back and unpack it, it's not worth it. It's never worth it to listen to the critics, because ultimately it's taking you out of the best that is there for you. Your best life is waiting for you. And the only way you're going to get that is if you stop listening to the critics. You silence them. If you can't silence them externally, you can silence them here and just say, I'm not listening to that. It's not part of my divine destiny. Love you to remember this quote by Zig Ziglar. He says, don't be distracted by criticism. Remember, the only taste of success some will ever have is when they take a bite out of you, which is just a wonderful, humorous way of looking at criticism. So if you're watching this anywhere except my blog, please come on over to joanendicott.com and leave a comment and hit the like button, and please share this, because criticism, as you know, is such an important topic, and if we're not careful, it will actually cripple us. And I wish you the best. Don't listen to the critics, listen to your heart, and just keep going. Until next time, God bless.